as we talk about gender equality, it's very easy to leave one gender behind, the men, because most of the time we focus on empowering women. How do we make sure that even as we bring the women to the level of men, we are able to maintain equality without leaving the men behind? It goes without saying that men are seen as the perpetrators of gender-based violence. But we must include them in the conversation because they have a crucial role as fathers, brothers, husbands, and public advocates in speaking out against violence against women and girls and defying the destructive stereotypes that normalize gender inequality. It is also important to change male attitudes towards physical abuse, psychological control, and domineering decision-making. Ladies and gentlemen, another manifestation of gender inequality is female genital mutilation. Statistics show that here in Kenya, around 4 million, or 1 in 5 women and girls, have been subjected to FGM. Although the numbers have declined over the years, we saw a rise to these cases when schools closed in response to COVID-19. We appreciate the fact that FGM is a priority in Kenya with an action plan to end it by 2022. Media plays a critical role in advocating for gender inequality and violence in Kenya. We are ready to partner with you and walk this journey with you to the end. We need more training so that journalists are sensitized to ensure gender-sensitive reporting. This will avoid bias in our news reports. This will also enable production of richer gender-sensitive and gender-transformative content that will break gender stereotypes. This includes challenging traditional social and cultural norms regarding gender perception, and by including women in leadership and roles and experts in our panels, if possible, on a daily basis. Public awareness through targeted messaging, tracking down and documenting victims of gender discrimination, and a close working relationship between the ministry and the mainstream media will go a long way in stemming the tide of gender equality discrimination. With those few remarks, and on behalf of the President of Kenya Editors Guild, Churchill Otieno, who was not able to join us today because he has to attend to another assignment, I wish to sincerely thank you all for being here today and look forward to more meaningful interactions in the short and long-term future. Asanteni sana.
Wow, thank you, the Vice President of the Kenya Editors Guild, Subedie. You've really set the stage for this discussion. And for us, as members of the Kenya Editors Guild, we've got so many questions to ask and so many interactions to have with the minister, because as you said, the position deserved her. And we need to understand actually what's on our plate. And many a times people think that working with media is such a, it's not easy. It's the easiest thing that media needs you, and you need the media in order to empower the public, especially in the new realm that you've been given and the new roles that you're working. Just as some basic announcement, ladies and gentlemen, we have a hashtag for this event, and we want our members who are not able to be with us also to be able to follow and to also write things that are going on in this forum. Hashtag is the Kenya Editors. I'll ask Rosalia to be able to zoom that hashtag. Are you able to? Okay, Press Club, hashtag is Press Club KE, and then at Kenya Editors Guild. And then we also want to, because we want to honor our guest of honor, also hashtag Professor Kobia. Yeah? Yes, because of, if she has a Twitter handler, we need to put it up here so that anything she'll be saying, we want to actually acknowledge it through the Twitter. And the other thing also, members who are watching us online, you switch off your phone and even the loudspeaker so that we don't interrupt this important session. And just before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge many editors who are here, who are with us, and who have been able to join us face to face. And we are so glad that you're able to come and share this key moment. Taking us the next level, I'm going to talk about the Inside Tech. As our Vice President talked about, the whole idea of reporting gender-based violence and what is gender inequality. And when we come to gender, what does it mean? And when we look at the history of women empowerment, when it started in 1975, there are quite a number of narratives that changed from women and empowerment, and then gender equality, now it's gender equity. And now, after post-Beijing, now we're looking at 25 years later, what can we be able to reposition this? So when the launch of this Gender Equality Forum in Paris actually took place, whereby 50,000, even our head state over there, the commitment of 40 billion of investment to ensure that this 5-year journey becomes a reality by 2026. It was actually came before COVID, and we couldn't know that we could be faced by the COVID the way we have been faced, and how COVID has actually enhanced gender violence in this country. Before, we could say gender violence was only women who are facing it, but we've seen that gender violence is affecting men in various positions. FGM is one of the gender violence, best violence we've been actually experienced for a long time, among others, and also just women not being given equal opportunity. But now the boy child also is suffering. So as the media, actually the key questions we are going to ask here, that the commitments that was provisioned of safe houses of all 47 counties, have they taken place? And also, how is the government going to make this happen? What partnership do you need with the media to make it work? And so, as I said earlier on, Professor, our chief guest, that this forum for us today is like no any other. We've been having press club luncheon, but for us, it's a time to learn from you. It's a time to get to know what you are working on, especially on after generation equality, what next for Kenya? And media, can the media create knowledge about this? What are some of the knowledge hubs that we can be able to have? And this is where we talk about data coming in. And you all know that when gender-based violence was reported, people were like, oh, all those facts and figures. But those facts and figures had faces. And as our data journalism guru called Paul Bradshaw says, data can be a source of data journalism, or it can be the tool with which the story is told, or it can be both. For us, we need both. A tool and a source of the story. When we were reporting that young girls could not report back to school because of sexual violence, it was a tool, but it was also a story, and those facts and figures had faces. And we needed to know what are the stories behind it. So as we are going to listen to this session, we're going to actually look into the questions that we are going to ask, what progress that has been made in the implementation of such commitments on houses, despite the fact that they're still escalating gender-based violence, and how can the editors who are here, do they have gender policy in the media houses? And what kind of the training gaps do we need to enhance skills in reporting, especially issues around gender, and linking it with SDG, and especially SDG 5, and embedded with all other work that is happening in the other development country. And also during the COVID reports, how can we visualize it? Use certain skills like visualization, and Program R, which is being taught on when we teach data journalism at Strathmore. We are using Program R and also other visualization. And the other thing we want to look into, I was part of a report on with a university in the UK, recently launched last week, where Kenya is ranking 147 out of 189 when it comes to Gender Inequality Index. And it's called actually using Tech Data Index on repositioning, looking at gender work in the world. And over 11 million of women in Kenya have experienced GBV. How can we capture these stories in the especially safe houses? How can we also look at gender violence between police and citizen? How, some of these things. So with that, Madam Chair and our chief guest, I'd like to actually look into challenge the editors, because I know they are going to challenge you that, oh, what are you doing? Do you have a gender-based violence desk in your media houses? Do you have a kind of a specialty to be able to say that you can be able to bring us gender-based violence? How can you create linkages with the ministry to be able to actually report these issues effectively? What are the networks have we created on these issues between government, civil society, and even private sector and academia, because research has been done in this area? How can we have regular round table to understudy when we say that FGM is now being actually not, is decreasing in certain area? What are certain indicators can we learn on that? So using our storytelling and using data journalism and using what we call Program R to vocalize and visualize gender-based violence statistics, will be able to highlight the capabilities of what the government is doing and the commitment that the government has made in addressing gender-based violence, and making sure 2016, the issues around this actually are well captured. So when we ask the question, what next, is also upon us as media to be say, what kind of a story do we want our children to read about these commitments? How do we want to position it? What kind of opinion pieces do we want to even highlight in our spaces? So with that, Madam Guest of Honor, Professor, I'd like to invite Eva Koba, who is going to talk about the SDG and the commitment of Kenya, especially using data as an indicator on highlighting some of the issues we have raised. Eva, thank you.
Our esteemed CS, Professor Kobia, the leadership of the Editors Guild, members of the Editors Guild or the Editors Guild or Press Club, invited guests, good afternoon. Whenever I see Madame Kobia, I see myself in the next 10 years in her space. She's my greatest role model. And when the president announced that she's going to take additional dockets, I told my husband, you see, the president has discovered that women can deliver. And here, we have a huge portfolio. And he said, yeah, the COVID response was best led by women. The countries that had women in power, in leadership, are rated the best in terms of COVID response. So Madame Kobia is going to, again, pick additional ministries and bring them on our side. All of them, including the big one down here, called the Treasury. So, Madam, I am a young woman, and to see you lead and do an excellent job motivates me to wake up as early as the woman headed to Marikiti and sleep as late as the woman who is breastfeeding. Thank you very much for shining the light on leadership for women. Actually, we can quote you as many times as possible to affirm the issues of women in leadership. We need more of them in the next elections. So I am here. I am the gender lead of the Sdgs Kenya Forum. The Sdgs Kenya Forum is a coalition of civil societies, 350 of them, and even more, working both at national level and county level. And our core work is to ensure there's advocacy around the 17 SDGs. And also we work to monitor the implementation, review, reporting, and track of the 17 SDGs. And as I stand here, I am the gender lead who is working on SDG 5. So I will be here to just shed us light a bit of where we've come from, where we are, and where we are going, and a little bit of the gaps, especially on issues of data, that if not addressed, we will have we will not be able to implement generation equality to the fullest. So please come. I need a charger. Let me pick something from my bag. Just to situate the generation equality conversation is that many, many years ago, 25 years ago, many of us in this room were born, the others had not been born. A few women in this country went to Beijing. Among them was Zipporah Kitoni. I think our able CS also accompanied them, who went to Beijing. And it was during the reign of our forefather called President Moi. And when they came back, it was hell on earth. It was fire. Because the government, the male leadership in this government translated into this, walikwenda kupanga vile watakalia wanaume na wamerudi. Na hata walikwenda na watu wa kusuka nywele. So there was a heated debate in the media. And if you are enjoying the current rights, the progress the nation has made up to this date, we need to give it to those women. Because it was rough. I remember my grandmother went to Beijing, and that day she wore socks zimefika hapa. She greeted everyone and bid goodbye everybody in the village. And when she came back, she never got out of the house for 2 weeks because the image that had been painted was gross, and it was literally a very hostile environment to operate then. But to just quickly move into, the laptop is not charging. Just help. So we were able to, the government was able to make some strides, especially with the Honorable His Excellency Kibaki coming into place. And Kibaki's main focus, if Prof, you may want to correct me, was largely on women economic empowerment. During his tenure, he lowered the entry grade. There was a lot of affirmative action for women and girls. He lowered the university entry grade. He came up with the Wezo Fund, Women Fund, the Youth Fund, and there was a lot of, laying ground for the current work, the work that has happened to be built on. We had some policies coming into place, and when now Honorable His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto took over, in 2014, around 2011, we had the anti-FGM board being set up. We had the Matrimonial and Marriage Acts of 2014. We had different committees being put together to look into issues of gender equality. Up until date, now we have the Generation Equality Forum that now is succeeding the Beijing commitments. When we analyze the Beijing commitments, we realize that there were two things. The commitments lacked a financial backing. They were mere verbal statements which were written out very well, but they lacked the financial, the budgetary commitment. So it posed a challenge in implementing them and even strongly institutionalizing them. The other bit is that, Madam Professor, maybe you've seen this, but I've been out there from the forum trying to champion that the whole Generation Equality Forum should have a face of the young women. after implementing the Beijing commitments for a while, we had begun to struggle with issues of succession. So now we are we're ensuring that young women are at the forefront so that the generation equality beyond 2026 is able to be sustained by young women and girls, even boys and men, who are then able to advance and ensure that the commitments are realized beyond 2026, if it happens that they will not be fully implemented. So, there's a struggle here. Huh? Yeah. Don't just start. Any IT person here to help? It's not charging. Okay, please. It should charge here.
Can we interrupt as you can actually people to raise issues as you are waiting? Eh? Yes, okay. Sorry. As technology is acting up and we're trying to address it, I think we need to just interact ourselves so that Professor Kobia, Madam CS, will be able to know who is also in the room. And I'll actually pick up Editor Ken. If you can just say hi and how you expect this meeting to go, and other people before, even Madam Rosalia, we just want to hear your voice. And I'm not seeing actually tweeting going. And how can you claim to be communicators and if nothing is going on? Please, let's hashtag it and be able to. Sorry? Yeah?
It's okay now. It's okay. It's okay now.
Okay. Now, something has come up here. Because we are among the editors, and you will allow you to, KTN wants to actually have our CS live on 1 o'clock news. And we'd like her to speak now so that they can actually just a few moments, and just to introduce Professor Margaret Kobia, Minister of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizen Affairs, and Special Programs to join and come and talk to us as the editors on the issue of generational equality, enhancing progress for gender equality. Madam Kobia, come on.
Thank you very much. The Vice President of the Kenya Editors Guild, the leadership, the presenters, the participants. Let me say I'm extremely happy to join you in this particular meeting and apologize for not making it on 30th. But as you all know, people who work in government, we already know that people trust the media more than they trust the government. So when you invite us, we actually think who is inviting. And I'm glad that I am known to some of the people who are in the Editors Guild, and they assured me, no, that is a friendly forum, because they are professionals who are just seeking to engage and they see how we can work together and promote gender equality and women empowerment. So I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank also the previous speakers. I think it has come out very clearly how we frame the issues in terms of gender equality and women empowerment, and to find what are we struggling with and what do we need to do. In particular, my presentation will more give you an opportunity to dialogue more. I may not have all the answers, but I might be able to tell you where are we in terms of after we launched generation equality. We have just heard about sustainable development goals, which means gender equality and women empowerment is not about Kenya. It's not about Africa as a continent. It's global. That there are concerns to the extent that when the UN decided to have the 17 SDGs, then they also decided the one on gender or equality and women empowerment is very critical. But you also note how these SDGs are very interrelated and very interdependent. If you are doing education, you must be talking about health. If you are doing poverty, I'm sure you are also talking about all the others. Therefore, I think as editors being able to link that the 17 development goals are critical so that you do not lose the line of sight why that we are all trying to achieve each of the SDGs, but at the same time link them together. We could also ask that, but why does gender equality and why does it matter? Is it gender equality for the sake of gender equality, or is there a bigger purpose? But we now know that countries that have got a good rating on gender equality are also having better quality of life. Therefore, research shows that, and I think we should be able to be persuaded. We also know that there is that need to coordinate policy, to coordinate the frameworks that will be able to influence how people see gender. Gender means different thing to different people. When I say gender, people say, oh, you have brought those women things, you know? But it's not about women. It's about the constructed roles of men and women, or girls and boys, but it influences the perception. And they also influence the perception that we have influences decision. Therefore, it's very important to be able to understand when you talk about gender, what do you really mean? And how does it affect the way we relate with one another? And how does it either promote or affect the socio-economic development of at individual level and at national level? Then knowing gender, the way we are socialized, either you are a man or a woman, and taking into account these are land roles, then we must ask ourselves, where does this all start? It starts right from the families. And that's what we have found in the ministry as we develop the policy. We ask ourselves, what are the challenges? And we have found through research, the way people are socialized at home, when they look at their father, when they look at their mother, and then there are those roles. And I can say, actually, there's nothing wrong with the roles assigned to the people. They only become a problem when they discriminate. When they assign roles to men that either discriminate them in the way they are supposed to benefit from the surrounding resources, or when also they deny girls and the women what they are supposed to gain. Therefore, we realize that the impact of the gender equality and the women empowerment is very important to think of how can we be more inclusive. Inclusive in terms of diversity of gender, and we know now organizations that are inclusive in terms of gender equality are likely to perform better. So we know decisions are better when they are inclusive in terms of gender. But we also know, at least on the table, you must be at least 30%. If you put 10 people here, women, and you put one man, the voice will be drowned. So statistics show us to have a significant voice and influence a decision, you must have that %. But we have also argued why that % when God created as 50-50. So that is the gap that we shouldn't be able to work around. But we all know why we are struggling with the issues to do with the gender. The way the patriarchal orientation that we have in Africa, in Kenya, kind of influences and gives us those roles that we are trying to change. But I can quickly add, the way I was socialized is different from the way I'm socializing my daughter. They have questions. Why shouldn't they do some roles the way I did them? And why? And we have seen some difference in the way they are able to kind of fight for their space so that they can make a contribution. Therefore, I want to thank especially the media, especially during the COVID-19. A lot we realized, and you remember there was a National Crime Center research done that showed that gender-based violence had increased by 92%. And that worried everyone, and this particular study was actually directed by His Excellency the President. And we have come to learn through that kind of a situation, then we need to think what else, what new intervention do we need to put in place. And while we have been in that journey of gender equality and women empowerment, which is long and bumpy since the Beijing, and it is true, those ladies who went to Beijing, they made 12 critical areas that we should be working on, right from women and poverty, women and education, women and health, women and climate change, and all those. Those are the ones we have been building on. But still working around the Beijing platform of action, we have realized we are not covering a lot of grounds. And that is what has connected us with Generation Equality Forum. And what we are hearing is the younger people, the intergeneration team, is saying we want equality now, in their lifetime. Therefore, what the UN has done, supported by France, supported by Mexico, they have come together and said, we need people who can champion some action coalitions to make a real impact and to make a difference. And in that decision of Generation Equality Forum, they have come up with 6 action coalition. These 6 action coalition, the first one is gender-based violence. Second one, economic justice and rights. 3, boundary autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights. 4, feminist action for climate change. 5, technology and innovation for gender equality and feminist movement and leadership. The reason why I'm articulating the 6 is no one action coalition can achieve alone. Just as also in Kenya, we know we have to work across multi-agencies, multi-ministries, so that you can be able to make an impact that is significant. Because when you talk about gender equality and women empowerment, you realize there is a whole pillar on leadership and decision making. That stands alone, because women need to get the confidence to be able to lead and they put their voices on the table. So that's one pillar which one of the groups you work with in gender sector working group involve. Then you realize there is a whole pillar of socio-economic empowerment for women, because we know unless you empower women, and especially economically, and I think the media need to highlight that, they have no voice. Poverty wears the woman face. Therefore, if there is no economic empowerment, then even the gender-based violence increases. There is a relationship between gender-based violence and the poverty. So when you are working for another second pillar to support the other pillars to get the total sum of that gender equality and the women empowerment. Then you look at the gender-based violence, it's another pillar that much as we have interventions to stop gender-based violence, it also benefits from leadership, because enlightened and a woman who has confidence is able to not to be stigmatized when they are experiencing gender-based violence. They are also able to put a voice. When it happens in the neighbor, when they happen within the environment, they can be able to voice out and use either the numbers that we have given as hotline, or be able to find a redress. So it is very important. Then we have also women, peace and security. That is another huge pillar that we work in the effort to promote gender equality. Many times women have been looked at as victims, but the women also can contribute to peace and security. They have the information, the people who are perpetrators live among them. So there is a new thinking that we should also use women to participate in fighting the peace and security. And of course, all the conflict. And in any case, when there are conflict, when there is no peace, it's the women and children who suffer more. So what I'm trying to say is, you cannot just target gender-based violence in isolation. You must have all the pillars that make the total sum of how you are making progress. And I think research has already told us that. So what is new in this Gender Equality Forum? I think the 11 commitments globally, they got political goodwill commitment. I think we have said, for those who went to Beijing, you realize they were women. But Generation Equality Forum, you find the presidents are involved, the youth are involved, and all the other players. And I think what is new in Generation Equality Forum is the new approach, innovative approach of, in the spirit of not leaving anyone behind, we are supposed to work with the private sector, civil society. I know our government sometimes is not very good in working with civil society because they criticize our policies. So, so then we work with the academia. We work with the women-led organization and girl-led organization, the human rights organization. So if you are to frame one issue that is different in the way we are promoting gender equality through Generation Equality Forum, is those new innovative approaches of leaving no one behind. So it brings on the table the skills of partnership, the skill of coordination framework, so that you will be able to move on the same and be able to measure progress. I think that is very, very important. And this is where you would ask, then what is the role of the media? And I think the role of the media is very, very critical. I was looking at some of the data that says 46% of the media content promotes gender stereotypes. Do you hear that? And the prejudices. Do you agree? If you don't agree, we can also have an opportunity to do our own research. 46% of the media content promotes gender stereotypes and the prejudices. That means there are things we say, these are for women, these are for men, even when they are discriminatory. You know the stereotype, how we stereotype. For example, maybe science and engineering is not for girls. Or, well, if there is fewer resources at home, we will support the boy and not the girl. So those stereotypes have not worked very well for us. That means the more we empower communities and societies, the better. Only 4% challenge gender stereotypes. Of your content, only 4% challenge stereotypes and the prejudices. And then, according to the UN study, only 7% promote gender equality of your content, both print and electronic. I think then that tells us we have a gap that we need to work together and close. We also realize that much as we are not making much progress on gender equality, about 20% of NGOs work around in gender sector. 20% of all NGOs go to Northeast, and most of them, wherever they are, in the urban, in the slum, 20% are dealing with gender. Yet, the progress is painfully slow. So, how to collect the data and the statistics that informs the decision? The way we do it in Kenyan government, we use the Kenya Demographic Survey, Health, 2021, 2022, to capture the data that informs decision making. For example, you have had 1 out of 4 girls, women between 14 and 49, they have undergone FGM. That is the worst type of gender-based violence, and then that should also inform our policy, who do we address. We also use the data from research institutions, and I'm happy universities are here. We have just joined with the University of Nairobi, Strasbourg University, Kenyatta University, funded by Berida Gates program, just to be able to give us data, so that data can inform policy, and then decisions which are made are more targeted to deal with the issues. We have also had the National Crime Center, KIPRA, all that generate a lot of data that we could use. We also have hotlines that now they are reporting directly, and that is one way of collecting data that could be used for decision making regarding gender-based violence, which is the action coalition that Kenya is participating in Generation Equality Forum. Not forgetting, we coordinate gender sector working group, and in fact, when I was coming, I asked, does media participate in gender sector working group? And I was told through Association of Women in the media, they participate in that particular sector working group. Because as you realize, gender equality cuts across. It is in other ministries. It could also be a target for NGOs and other organizations. We also have a gender-based violence information system, which is part of the commitment that we have made. Then what is the role of Editors Guild? We want you to highlight the need for inclusion of gender equality as one of the targets to realize this Generation Equality Forum and in our time. Because literature is also telling us, if we just went the way we are, without new intervention from Generation Equality Forum, it would take 200 years before we get gender parity. I'm sure nobody wants to wait for those 200. No, we must have other interventions. We also think that you can also educate and inform progress made on generation equality and gender-based violence. You should be able to find, and I think I've seen a lot of TV programs that are focusing on gender-based violence, people citing their experiences, telling their story. When people tell their story, I think then the interventions are more targeted. We have also found that highlighting teenage pregnancies and early marriages, I think because that is all part of what disables women from getting to their full potential. We could also promote gender equality by pointing out the unconscious gender bias. I think many of us, we actually are sometimes influenced by unconscious gender bias, and sometimes for the women who are here, even when you are at a very senior level, those biases still follow you, and you have to fight them, and you have to remind the people around you that those biases, you are alive about them, and so that you can make the right decision. Those biases, even when you are at the cabinet level, in the case you think it's going to end soon, you realize that matter, the way it has been taken, I'm just reminded it's an agenda issue. We are not oversensitive, but you could give a very important, valid point, and maybe the chairman doesn't look like he's very keen, but if the same point is said by the man, it becomes very, yeah, so I think you could do that. We could also hold government accountable and other stakeholders for the commitments we have done. I'm going to read to you commitments that we have given. I think you have to be on our case, because so that you can ask us these commitments that you signed in Paris and they are localized in our context. We signed them, but every country has got their own local context. How are we implementing them? We could also highlight, reading by example, implementing gender equality program in your own institutions. And I have been involved. You must be a role model. If you are saying we are going to improve gender equality and you are in the nation media, you must ask yourself, what are you doing to create that environment that will promote gender equality? what we have found in research is there's a lot of understanding and the people want to do it. But when it comes to implementing, then it's something. So can we move from talking to implementing? That environment, that policy that could improve gender equality. As I conclude, or just before I conclude, I'm sure you are keen to find out what did we commit ourselves. During the launch of Generation Equality, Kenyans' commitments were about 11, and we said we want a full adaptation of gender-based indicator in government performance contracting. That means in every organization, we will ask what indicator, what will you do with the resources you have, the people you have, what will you do with the gender-based violence? 2, the government is already investing close to $450 billion that is going to be used, and through, for once, this is through core financing. You bring the state, the civil society, other stakeholders, so that you can development partner, that you can be able to raise this money. I think raising the 50 million is very important, because in the past we have made commitments, but a commitment that is not matched with the resources is useless. So we make it this year, next year. So even as the people from the media, every commitment that is made in your institution, I think is good also to follow it with the resources. We have also said we invest annually about 1 million for gender research. I think gender research and innovation to boost evidence-based programming by the year 2026. The Generation Equality Forum is from 2020 to 2026. It's a 5-year program. And we also committed to ratify and implement the ILO Convention 190 on eliminating gender-based violence and harassment in the world of work by the year 2026. We also committed ourselves, and these commitments were read by His Excellency the President, who has been very, very supportive actually to women empowerment. This is one president who is not afraid of strong women leaders. There are sometimes, even when it comes to nomination, presidents normally round over. They have a very strong voice. If they say you are not good or they don't nominate you, then you might not progress. So I think it's also very important, as in the media, we try tracing how does our pipeline look like. If an opportunity came, would there be women, or would there be, if it's a man issue, would there be people who are ready to meet those opportunities? It's very important. Also, we want to introduce a module on gender-based violence in the 2022 Kenya Demographic Health Survey to promote data to inform the design, scale-up, and evaluation of female genital mutilation and the gender-based programming. We also want to develop a gender-based violence management and information system by the year 2022, which is the year we are also supposed to be heading FGM. We also want to integrate services including medical, legal, and psychological support services into the essential minimum package of the universal health coverage. And you have also must have heard about polycare. Have you heard about polycare? Where they are bringing all these services under one roof. They have just finished their pilot, and so that the victims of gender-based violence, you can go to one roof, you can get health services, you can get legal services, you can get counseling services, and this now we need to implement it in all the 47 counties. Then we also want to scale up, the National Police Service Integrated Response to Gender-Based Violence, that is the police care. We also finally, the last one, want to establish gender-based survivor fund through a co-financing model in partnership with the private sector, civil society, and the other stakeholders for economic empowerment of gender-based warriors. I think survivors. So it is very important for us and as media to highlight what is different if we are now having a whole of government, the whole of society approach in dealing with the coalition that Kenya has decided to pursue, which is gender-based violence. But I don't want you to forget also other coalitions are important. We are also implementing here. but you will be answerable when it comes to UN Generation Equality Forum. Will be answerable more to gender-based violence. But I also want you to underline that gender-based violence cannot be implemented alone without all those other pillars, because there is a relationship with that. Therefore, in conclusion, gender-based affects health, economy, and development of the country. So I urge the media to work with the government and all other stakeholders to implement these commitments. Media has a big role in matters of public, because it's a public interest, is indeed global initiative that brings together an opportunity. That's why we are taking it in Kenya. This Generation Equality Forum is a new opportunity which brings high-level political leadership. We are also bringing the financing model, and also at the same being able to have a framework that connects national level. And since most of these issues we are dealing with are at the grassroots with the county government, and then have a monitoring and evaluation framework so that we can be able to give progress every 6 months. I thank you. I think I've taken more than my time, but I will take questions if there is.
Thank you so much, Professor Kobia. And she has actually highlighted key issues that we wanted to know, and also raised the issues that, as the media, just give me 1 second. Just sit down. Give me 1 second. Yeah. As the media, actually, there are things we need to address. And we were told, actually, she might be in a hurry. And since this is an interactive meeting where we want the editors to engage, both online and even physically, we'd like you to actually highlight some of the key issues and ask questions where you need certain clarification, but also where you need some explanation, and also the way forward, because what we are actually seeking during this press luncheon, Professor, is to create a partnership. You've already challenged us, how can we create that partnership with the media to make sure that this commitment that was made in Paris become a reality in 2060, and also be able to actually work together. And if you can give me just a few minutes, I give back to Eva to speak, then we have open to Q&A. Great. Thanks.
Actually, Prof has answered as almost preempted my presentation, but just to follow up on what she has said, I'll quickly delve into the crux of what I had wanted to speak about today. So at the center of GEF, we are prioritizing data to enable us realize the agenda by 2026. So there's been significant progress around data work in Kenya, but during this COVID period, we have seen some serious gaps that, if not addressed, we will have issues in realizing the commitments. And in terms of this, the first challenge, or rather I'll call it a gap, is issues around limited sex disaggregated data. When you go to KNBS and you want data on FGM, the last research, KDHS on FGM, was done in 2014. So even if you're presenting this at a global forum, they term it as stale data. It doesn't present the reality on the ground. And still on issues of disaggregated data, we struggle with data on men. So when we say the boy child has been neglected, where's the evidence? We are living currently in a space where data is used to provide evidence. So in most of the existing research now, we have what I would call a lot of feminist data, women-only data, and we do not have gender and equality data that speaks on the issues of men. It could be a challenge to say, when I say that on the ground, the KDHS, the KDHIS, the data that is collected at the hospital on issues of health, is largely speaks on women, and it's because of the health outcomes of men. I'll give an example, like when my dad got COVID, it took the effort of the police to take him to the hospital. most men don't go to the hospital. So it means that to get the data, we have to get it at household level. And that gives us more challenges than that. The same happens with data on violence on children. It's not easily available. Then we have, as we speak about advances in data, you've talked about the crime agency, other government departments. But at the KNBS, the only data recognized is the official data. This all other data is called citizen-generated data, and it largely remains unrecognized. So when civil society produces data, it's just your data. It's not data that the government could use as authentic data. So I want to applaud that we have made moves as the SDG Forum working with the KNBS, and we are working on a case-CAF, a framework that will provide standards for generation and adoption of citizen-generated data. And that might be very helpful. But I'm wondering, when will it be ready for us to start engaging with it? I've talked about the availability of current data, and there are instances where we completely don't have data, like data on cross-border FGM. And here is where we call in the media. Could we use our regional newspapers, like the East African People, to call upon the presidents and leadership of the 3 regional bloc countries to collaborate and provide us data, provide us mechanisms for ending cross-border violence, and especially right now during COVID, when it is very, very ripe. We can't estimate the magnitude of cross-border FGM across the 3 borders, Kenya, Somali, Kenya, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. And we are also looking at this lack of a platform where we can have a conversation on issues of data. We have data users, data suppliers, and data producers. Yeah. So that kind of platform, if provided, will help us to caucus, update, agree, and learn, even build our capacities on issues of data. The SDGs Forum is working with KNBS to see that that platform is made live. Then just away from data, there is the issues of budgets. Currently, we are having the budget for 2021-2020. From 2022 to 2023, the commitments have been made. Are you able to confirm that the commitments in the GEF, the financial commitments in the GEF will feature in the next budget? They'll have been picked upon, and we can begin to see the implementation rollout well-funded. We are looking also at the issue of, the SDGs Forum did an analysis of the budget, and we looked at the trend. And the trend is whereby we have been having depreciation on budget allocations for gender. So what is it? Can the media help us also go in to look at, I'll say like, here we have, the media has done a wonderful job. This I picked at Radio Africa. They've done an analysis of the Kenyan budget, but it's so global. We need to sort of granulate it so that it begins to speak at how much is going into gender, sectoral, as opposed to the whole block that if you look into it, you cannot see how much is going into gender, how much is going into what, and that allows sort of government to escape with some of these things. And then as you produce this, are you able to produce it in Swahili and other local languages so that then the mwananchi on the ground can begin to engage with the process? I find that the budget process in Kenya is very technical, and people tend to shy away from engaging with it. So that low budget issues need to look into, and we need to track, as the media, track, monitor, and report on those allocations. And then we have realized also that in this country, an allocation is different from a disbursement, is also different from an expenditure. So you can be very excited about an allocation until you see the actual disbursement, and you start asking yourself, how will Prof work with this? So the media should be able to highlight that. There is the issues of response. We heavily rely on civil society shelters. Some of them suffer security issues. Last year we rescued a girl, a Belgian girl in Kenya. And it was in the heat of COVID. It was a team, a lot of effort. Then we take her to Isili in a rescue center. And her community raided it in the middle of the night. And so we received calls. The chair of the board, anti-FGM board, received a call. I got another one, and we are being told, go undercover. And I'm like, should I enter under the table? Because now things are. And as we work around these issues of gender and FGM, there's power involved, there is resources involved, there's the way communities, the cohesion that then comes into play when you rescue a girl. So that issue of shelter, we were looking at it. If had it been a government-funded shelter, it would have had security, maybe surveillance. So we had to. Dr. Matiangi, the CS for Interior, had to come in and, rescue the girl, put it at a known place, and that is now a task to you and even the media to highlight the lack of enough government-funded shelters. And then I am being rushed here. I'm going to the conclusion. But the key question here, and I think the media should start asking, is how will the sustainability of issues of gender, equality, and development look like, especially GEF, past the tenure of Professor Kobia and His Excellency the President? Because the President is the face of GEF. What is it happening? What structures is the department and maybe the whole of government putting in place so that we don't go back because Professor Kobia was moved to water and sanitation, or we don't go back because President Uhuru has left and we have no one else to advance that, and maybe the agenda is not essentially related to generation equality. So as you interview political aspirants in those newsrooms, the Honorable Raila, the Honorable Ruto, you may want to ask them, are you integrating some of this in your manifestos? The governors, they should be able to tell us whether they will prioritize or deprioritize the generation equality. Then on issues of data, there should be an accountability and implementation framework that should have a practical and investment data plan, so that we are not saying that the government will give this much money on data, but we don't have a framework that shows really how much is accompanying this funding on data, because KNBS constantly reports on issues of lack of resources. So how much are we going to give KNBS so that as they integrate the module on GBV in the next census and KDIHS, this is the funding available to enable that. This is the amount of resources that we really go into data, so that we are very clear and you're not discussing it from a very global angle. Then for the media, we have this, I call it sort of the gender desk at the police station. We have the same at the media stations. They have the gender desk at the media station. But I urge that we adopt a whole of newsroom approach when discussing issues of gender, so that even the journalist reporting on water has to find the intersectionality. The journalist reporting on health has to highlight this. The journalist reporting on environment has to highlight on this. And constant capacity building for the media and everyone in the sector. We are not all gender experts. I've just been trained on gender data, but I didn't know it as much as I went to university and have a master's in gender. So up to that level, I just want to thank you, and I have a full presentation. I've skipped a bit of those key things, but I just wanted to highlight this to Madam and yourself so that we can complete the session with answers.
Thank you. And we had promised this to be reactive, kind of talking to each other, not talking at each other, and sharing it over meal. And mealtime is almost to be over, but we don't want you to walk out on us. So we want you to engage our minister, especially on issues that have been raised, that she's raised, the 11 commitments, and if there's ways in which they're going to engage the media, and how the media is going to work with the ministry to make sure that they brand the GEF gender equality commitment to, I call the ordinary woman, the Wanjiko on the ground, and the Wanjiko daughter on the ground, so that they'll be able to understand that my government is committed to the next 5 years to address gender equality, that if I'm experiencing, I know the issues. So I want questions to come, and you talk of data. I live and talk data, and we're one of the few people that actually introduce data in this country. And just this week, we're part of the Global Data Forum that talk about the importance of geospatial and statistics in decision making. And next month, we'll be hosting at Strathmore the Kenya National Bureau on actually adapting some of the things that have been raised. So on issues on gender and data, I'm glad that Kenya government was actually one of the leading countries, and I can say that without fear or favor, because by that time, I supported the process at Ford Foundation. And so, questions? Yes.
My name is Faith Onea from Nation Media. So Madam C has pointed out a few very interesting things that I'd like to follow up in questions. One of the things you challenge us to do is to point out the unconscious gender bias in our reporting, in the way we produce, in the way we edit news, and so on and so forth. And there's something else, there's an anecdote you gave about children growing up in a family and how even the unconscious gender bias happens there in the gender roles that we assign them, and so on and so forth. And they come to bite them later in future when they are probably they are ministers like yourselves, they are in the newsrooms, they are editing, and that's when those biases show up in one way or the other. My question to the ministry is how we are catching these biases when these young girls and boys are still young. A lot of the interventions that we have shared today are about after the fact, you know, after there has been the bias, after there has been violence is when you go to a police station and have the polycare. But what about when they are still very green, when they are still very young, and probably not even aware that they are being violated or that they are biases? What happens then? Are there any measures to take care of that? And the other question is about something you pointed out, which has always worried me as well, in terms of how there are so many NGOs that exist per square meter to address women's challenges, you know? And we know, that just to play a cynical card, if women didn't have these issues facing them, then NGOs to fight FGM, GBV, inequality, and so on and so forth would not exist. So are there any plans to sort of address this sort of glaring issue that the NGOs still exist, they address the same problems, but the problems still persist? Like, is there anything to come up with a solution for something like that?
Important process. We'd like the CS to actually ask one so that we can capture it, because we want to document it. If you don't mind coming up and standing. Is there another question that, yes, just one more and then.
My name is Millicent Awor. I have I don't know whether to call it a practical question that I would appreciate if our CS gives us an answer to in the area of senior citizens affairs. 2 days ago, a friend called me from Kitui. By the virtue of the fact that I'm in the media, Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, and she told me that there is this senior citizen who has suffered a stroke. The wife does not want to see him. The wife leaves him in the house in the morning. She comes back in the evening. This man has no food. Nobody is taking care of him. Do you know a center where we can take him? I've still not responded to that. I just told her, let me see what we can do. So, as the government, what are we doing about this? We are talking about safe houses. The men are suffering out there. Is there anything we are doing, and just how soon? Thank you.
Madam Minister, there's one more, if you don't mind. One more, yes. Wow. You can take them. You can answer them. Okay. Let her answer this, and then we can do the next one. Ms. Todd, can we wait to answer them?
Thank you very much for the questions that have come from the floor. It just tells us we have been engaged. So just before I go to the questions that have been raised, let me say also the whole issue of data. I think it is completely important. But as even we are thinking about the data, we should also think about the integrity of data. Are we together? The integrity of data, that means the process and the final data, so that it is credible and is varied. I think we have heard where data has been done very well by Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and other universities, but we have also had data that has come from some of the NGOs which are not, don't have a lot of integrity, where they have exaggerated number for a different purpose. They are very few, but I think that's why whenever you are looking at data, you want to know the source. And you also want to wear the lens that you are using credible data, so that wherever you present it, you also have confidence that is from a credible source. They also talked about, yes, I think in this Generation Equality Forum, we have even said we are going to have budgetary allocation for research, because so that we are not having only one source of that data. I think that is also something that, and we have followed in the supplementary budget 1, we have been allocated a little money, like 200 million, to be able to do some of the work relating to generation equality. However, I think we still need, because any conference I've been, or any book that you read, or any engagement that you have with people who are in the gender sector, data has always remained a problem. So we must find a way of how are we going to access the right data, and also looking at, like, in gender-based violence, we know only 20% will report because of stigma, and when it comes to men, almost something like less than 5%. So, when we know gender issues, and not just about women, even we are saying we want equal opportunities for both men and women, politically, socially, economically, and culturally. I think that so that everybody can maximize their potential. And that's why I would want to close the observation that came from her presentation, that we have the candy to change some of these things. We are going to election now. What is the media going to do to highlight what kind of people we should elect? The people elect sometimes are our own reflections. And if they don't serve us well, we have an opportunity to have the people who serve us well. And in my view, I've always said I want to look for somebody who is godly and look for somebody who is competent, because I've seen a lot of people who are elected and they are not competent at all. So even what you're asking them to do is beyond their capacity. I've also character. I would really say, what is the track record of this person? What do we know that he has a character that we want to represent? Media can do quite a lot, and I think since it's not just one organization, this is why you think, how can we perform better together? I always believe together we can do more. But we can only do more when we have been very specific and said, for media, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the way you are going to be measured. So that it's not left to general, because when it's left to general, then it just becomes a talk shop. The question from Faith, where she wanted, how can we catch the unconscious bias? Actually, I don't have an answer to this. But I know in the families, we bring those biases sometimes ourselves. A father will go and buy a girl a doll. You know, a doll. Why not buy her a car? because we have been socialized that way. So we start kind of, instead of giving the right toys, which could be different from what we have always known, then we introduce them right at home. So for me, I think it's more when we have the training for the parents, for the various groups, wherever you are, wherever there's an opportunity, to say that anything that discriminates men or women, that we are introducing it right at home, we should change. And as I said, there is a change, there is progress. It's not like we are starting from zero. So, and if there's anybody else in this room who, I said my purpose of coming here is that dialogue and engagement, and to deepen your debates. If there are, I'm sure there could be proposals in our context, Kenya, how we could actually remove this unconscious bias, because it's very, very common. Even with the people, because even with the people who are in high offices, sometimes I've been asked by, why do we want so many women in this parliament? So that is a very unconscious bias, because they think that, what would make somebody ask, why do we want so many women in parliament? But they have never asked me, why do we want so many men in parliament? So some of those, I think there are those unconscious biases, and I think we can do something to change so that everybody has a potential. And when they are noticed, I think we should confront them, in my view. And without feeling any guilt, we must confront them, raise them up, so that maybe people can start becoming conscious. Many NG, this is the children, and I think the children in the family, how do we start socializing them? I think the study that was done by National Crime Center highlighted children are getting a little bit confused. Either parents, not in fault of their own, are too busy looking for livelihood. So children are brought up by somebody else, or they are kind of, they find them, and you can't blame the parent, because the parents also have to be at work so that they can be able to feed the children. So the family structure has changed. But as it is changing, we need to be conscious. If that is the way it's going to go, then our children will grow with no ethics and with no values. And then we now come to complain. Maybe at a later time when they are teenagers, they want instant things. They want to immediately, they are employed. Many people, young people who get jobs, they are exhibiting that impatience. Maybe because, and I imagine this is the way they were socialized. So this is our whole area that if you want to correct a lot of things that are not working, we should start with the family unit. Then the communities. They are the only one who can change some of these traditional values. The question of the senior citizen, yes, it is the government's intention to provide services and good to all the citizens. But the vulnerable, like the senior citizen, like this one who is sick, then is like who would, one, the family would have been expected to take care of them. Two, the government has got what we call cash transfer. This cash transfer also, one has to be registered. It has not worked very well, but I think we are going to look into it. Nowadays, nobody, if they are everybody has a telephone in Kenya nowadays. I was being told, even people who can't put food on the table, they have a telephone. And so cash transfer is a model that is will work, and that's what the government has started doing, rather than making you and help us as a media. Instead of going to queue for food, maybe it's maragwe and samunga. Well, give them money, then they have a choice of what to go and buy, which means if you work with entrepreneurs, they will supply those things in the shops, and then people will get and be able to buy. But on this particular case, it's unfortunate, and there are cases like this where the family is not giving the care, and then somebody is left maybe sometimes to. There are the people, the social workers, maybe who are very few. You also know some parts are quite dispersed. So I may not have an answer how to really deal with it, but those who are being captured in some data, they can only receive the cash transfer. Sometimes it's not easy. You can receive that cash transfer, but you are not able to go to the shop or it is even taken away by your grandchildren. It is happening. So we must find a solution. We could have very good intention, but when implementing on the ground, that we experience some of those difficulties. But I'm sure we can be able to highlight those so that people can make maybe an intervention that improves. I think I want to stop here. If there's one which I have not. Shelter. Let me talk about the shelter because it's very, very important. We have about 36 shelters now, some private, like women representatives for the county. One of the projects they have been taking is to build shelters. We also have some NGOs, and we have also some governors, and I think the best shelter is in Makueni. Do you know that? I think you make a visit. Because it's linked with the hospital and other amenities, so it works. That is the model we want to duplicate as in many places as possible. But at the same time, the shelters, I can accept we have had a gap. We build a shelter, but we have not thought through the stuff. We have not thought about we need to work with the national government or we need to work with the county government. So most of the ones now, those studies, and then we have, last month, we realized these questions are coming because we have not thought of a policy on those rescue centers. Because you must think through it, so that not just having a building, and then at the end of it, maybe it has no electricity or it has electricity that is cut. So we have 36 from government, from civil society, from people with goodwill. So I think, but it is the intention of government to build at least one per county. And I think some have started in different stages, and we just need to recognize them. But there's not like a panacea for this gender-based violence. No, it is not. This is just one of the intervention, because sometimes those who have had, who are victims of gender-based violence may not sometimes want to leave their home, especially if the children are small. And so you find that the rescue center will not work for everyone. However, it is one of the intervention. And also in those rescue centers, some people can, if they are there for a long time, can get the services we have talked about. They can also get some training, like if they are there for 3 months. But all that has to be budgeted, planned, and then the structures put in place so that we can be able to sustain them. Right now, it's a bit loose, and I think we in the ministry, as we said, we are about policy and coordination. We want to give more time within the GEF on these shelters. Thank you very much. If you don't mind us.
Thank you, Madam Professor CS. There are 3 more questions, yes. And also we'd like also a favor that KEG also would like historical photograph with you, so that it can be part of our documentation in this process. And also with that also, I want to commit myself on behalf of KEG 16 days of activism in Ghana. Yes. How are we going to partner, and how are we going to make this a reality? So 3 more questions, Ms. Tom, and then
I'll stand up to ask my question. Yes. My name is Topista Nabusoba. I work for KBC. My first question to Madam CS, Professor Kobia, is on the issue of awareness creation across sectors, especially on GBV particularly. This is because does the police have that awareness? I'm asking this because 2 days ago I was in the village. I lost an elderly sister-in-law. She was murdered in her house. 2 days later, another elderly woman was again murdered. And the villagers wonder whether the police are actually doing the requisite investigations, because they just come and pick up the body. So across, in terms of awareness creation, how is this going on? The GBV has been termed as the shadow pandemic, and yet the numbers seem to be increasing rather than decreasing. That is my first question. The second is on collaboration with the civil society. What collaboration is going on between government and civil society? I want to speak from the point of a journalist. it is easier to get information from civil society, interviews and what have you, but very difficult to get the same interviews from government. Thank you.
Two more last questions. She had raised her hands first. Yes. Yes, speak. I want you need to talk to it because we are recording it. Oh, okay. Sorry. Madam CS, thank you very much. And I think you already answered my first question. I had two questions. The first one was on the shelters and polycare and all that. And I'm glad that's happening. We just hope that the implementation will be real. Nairobi County already has a bill on putting up shelters in all the sub-counties. Now, the shadow pandemic has also proven that the importance of these cash transfers. You've just talked about cash transfer for the elderly. We've had situations where maybe a woman has been beaten up and kicked out of her home and she's really got nowhere to go. Are there any considerations that you're putting in place in as far as cash transfers are concerned? Thank you. Thank you. So with that last, we'd like to ask Madam CS to answer the question, then we'll ask her to, we'd like to take a photo with the Kenya leadership and also some of the editors that are here also later on. And then we'll ask either to Millicent to say a vote of thanks at least so that we can say how do we move from here. And the commitment the editors are making, because we challenge us, how are we going to work together?
Thank you very much for the questions that have come. Creation of an awareness on a GBV is very, very important, because unless people are aware, even the early warning of gender-based violence, when are you in an environment that you are likely to experience gender-based violence? But I think this can be done. What we have been doing in the ministry is more through gender mainstreaming, and we have had interaction with the different medias, different forums when we're having like 16 days of activism, so that, but I think we could do much more in terms of creating awareness, to almost maybe having a part of it in the school curriculum, so that the young girls, and that has also started happening, especially for the early pregnancies, so that people know where are you likely to experience this gender-based violence. It exists. We are also saying stop the silence. You have heard that, stop the silence, so that whenever you experience or you know somebody who is going through gender-based violence, you raise up a voice, and most likely then they will be addressed. If you keep quiet, then nobody will know what is going on. Of course, we have always said we work with this Nyumba Kumi. You have heard of Nyumba Kumi? Those are the where we can report some community issues that can be addressed because there's a structure. Where there's no structure, it becomes very difficult to capture some of this information. So we still have gaps in awareness, and I would also draw it to the media again. Tell me how we can, as we partner with you, how can we raise awareness? And even if it means, can we start piloting? You know, even if you don't start the whole hog of it, what can we do in piloting in a certain area? And then we see the result of those and lessons learned, then we know how we scale it up. Collaboration with the civil society. I think I said one of the new things regarding GF is now it has put us to work with the civil society. And even when we are launching it, there was high representation of the civil society, because they are more faster than government, and you understand, government provides services and to everybody. But you might never be able to have a police for every citizen. So, but for the civil society, they are partners, they are our collaborators. So now we are kind of developing a skill how we can work with them, so that whatever information they have, they can be able to share. And now with the totality of all civil society and what they are doing put together, working with the government, private sector, development partners, I think we can do more, I believe. Yeah, so I think that's one. And now we have a framework within Generation Equality Forum, how each one is going to work with the government and with what result. But at the same time, we don't want to stop the civil society what they are doing. They should continue with what they are doing, but in addition, we have targets which are related to Generation Equality Forum. I would also want to invite you in what we call Gender Sector Working Group. I know Association of Women in the Media, they are there, but I think we would have a bit more so that you have this organization is presented more and we can see what more can we do. We also remain open if there's other areas, Vice President, we could do together. There are many areas, but can we identify of 3 and 4, do them well, and demonstrate results, so that we are, sometimes when you take everything, you might deliver nothing. So, but if you say, as a result of this meeting, we can think of 3 areas that we can partner with the government relating to GF, and then we are able to move like that. Where we are partnering with the university, they are very clear what they are doing, because they have a clear proposal, especially universities that are doing research that the government is going to use. So I'm sure there is room, and we could do also that. Another window for awareness is this 16 days activism, and I think I've mentioned that. Cash transfer for the elderly, we have about 1,200,000 people who are over 70 are registered and then get their cash through. But the demand is almost 3 times like that. But we don't have all the resources. But we also, during COVID, a few households in the informal sector were also identified where they got 2,000 shillings, I think, every month. And it went a long way to help them. Government might not have all the resources, but with partnering with other development partners, communities, the fund that was established, I think people have been helped. But there is still a gap. But the only way is a long journey starts with a few steps. And I think we hope this COVID, when everybody gets immunized, as many people as possible, then even that help, I think we should be looking forward so that where livelihood, where businesses have been closed, I think people could come back to their normal lives. I believe so. So government, my submission is government cannot do everything. But the government with all of our stakeholders, the media, the civil society development, private sector, together we can do more. We only need to hold each other accountable and make sure that we are working together for the good of this country. I believe so. I want to thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Take a photo of the leadership over here for just yes, as Millicent is coming for record purposes, and the CS says that out of this meeting there has to be commitment. And I'm a person who says, what are the low-hanging fruits? And the low-hanging fruits in this, yes. Let first the leadership first, then we can also join. Yes, you remove the mask. Yes. 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 And then we can just chat. Then join. Can also you can join. Just no, you join. Okay. Yeah. Remove the mask and. Because I know you are in a hurry and we need it. Yes, just a quick one for Millicent. Millicent, come and say, quick hanging fruits, Minister, takeaway. The 16 days of activism coming. And the 11 commitments, we'd like the Editors Guild to commit themselves that each day will be a thematic area for those commitments. The beginning of the 16 days, we can have a media stakeholder meeting whereby we showcase, I'll bring in the data and visualization of those commitments. and using Program R to be able to actually visualize it in terms of resources and in terms of reporting. But also then thematic areas, we look at how is it being reported from the rural up to the national, and having a page focusing on those, and having even specialities, people who are experts in those areas, showcasing both global. I remember in one of the years, we made the media have one headline all over the world about during the International Women's Day, and it was actually possible. So 16 days, we can just say the commitments of Kenya for gender equality, and focusing on kind of refocusing on the narrative to be based on that. The other commitment that I want us to, this capacity building, both from the government and also from the media and other stakeholders. How do we kind of scale up the skills in this area? Can we have certified training, partnering with academia, because I represent them, to be able to have certified training for skilling in this area so that we have speciality, both from civil society, media, and even the government. Lastly, it's about awareness. We have got media here, we are talking even the language the Wanjiku speaks, even Atienos, even the, what do you call it, Mwenis, all over the rural. Having campaign about this, where the ordinary mwananchi could be able to coordinate and create awareness. And those thematic areas, I want to challenge you now. Do you have a media strategy for the gender equality, so that we can have thematic areas, we can have ways of going forward on these issues? And these are the partnership we are talking about. Then the last day of 16 days, we can have a media roundtable to look back. Another maybe luncheon, another breakfast, to look back how the media has reported on these issues, and document them in a way that people say Kenya is making commitment. And these are the things that even during the UN meeting, we can say these are actually what we've been doing as a country in commitments to Gender Equality Forum. Thank you. And Millicent?
Thank you very much, Rosemary. When KEG called up this meeting, I just remembered my childhood. I used to have these neighbors. The man had 2 wives. And the 2 women would come together and really give the man a beating. So when I came here, I just wondered, now, is this going to be addressed also? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good afternoon. Mine is to say that as a guild, we really appreciate our guest, Professor Margaret Kobia. Thank you so much for finding time to come and be with us and share so much that the government is doing in this particular area of gender mainstreaming. Eva, I could see you really trying to articulate, especially the data element. Thank you so much for responding to our invite. All our guests, Odhiambo, Olale, maybe you could say that today there was no gender mainstreaming. But I know out there people are listening, yeah? So they are well represented. So the men are well represented. Thank you so much, Zubeida. Rosalia, Annie, and your team. Without you, these would not have been made possible. And above all, we want to thank our maker. COVID is here with us. But the fact that we are here, it means that we are COVID-free. So why not give him a clap? So thank you so much once again. Lunch will be served. We ask you not to leave. Please do have a bite, because I know that Annie and her team have already paid for it. So please, can we stand up? We pray for the food. Let us pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving Father, we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you for the deliberations that you've taken us through. We know that they shall bear fruits, Lord. Father, for the lunch that is ahead of us, Lord, we thank you for it, and we ask you to use that through our hands we may be able to give unto those who do not have. we thank you and we glorify your name. For it is in your precious name that we pray and believe. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Asanteni sana.